The people have spoken, and thanks to the unbelievable support you have all shown me, I've decided to finish this trilogy and delve just a little bit deeper into the incredible comparisons between Peter Jackson's masterpiece, The Lord of the Rings, and Amazon's embarrassment, The Rings of Power, a show that is indistinguishable from a parody, leaving no room for suspense or respect for the tone. A show that reminds us of the importance of passion and creativity when writing a story, as a budget this big will never be enough to carry a script this bad. And I don't think any scene comparison can highlight that fact more clearly than the battle for Helm's Deep versus the battle for the Random Tavern. Saruman assembled an army to destroy the world of men, 10,000 strong, ready for battle. And after being trapped under the wizard's curse, Theoden, the king of Rohan, awakens to see his house in ruin and his line is ended with the death of his son, and is forced to retreat to the great fortress of Helm's Deep. In a situation so desperate, they are forced to recruit children to fight, and Aragorn, still bloodied and battered from his near-fatal fall, prepares to lead them in battle. Legolas, thanks to his incredible vision, points out the weakness in their armor, as Aragorn leads the front line, rallying the elves that came to support them, while Gimli struggles to control his desire for combat.
Send them coming! Come on!
The hail of arrows hinder their progress, but it's just not enough against these numbers, as they reach the wall and raise the ladders. The Berserkers assault the front line, and they show several sequences to highlight the skill sets of our three main characters. And we get a wide shot to get a real sense of the size of this battle and show the variety of tactics they're using to siege the fortress. And thanks to the intel from that greasy snitch Wormtongue, Saruman has equipped them with the means to take down the wall. The fortress has been breached and Aragorn is knocked to the floor, barely escaping the blast that managed to kill soldiers on both sides. And after seeing how out of position he is, Gimli throws himself into the heat of the battle, fighting them back to stall for his friend. And Aragorn stumbles to his feet and immediately returns the favor, rallying the elves to send them a volley. Then Legolas makes his grand entrance to cover them as Aragorn gets Gimli out of the water. An incredible display of teamwork in the heat of battle. But it's no use, as the horde swarms the fortress from above and below, slowly forcing them back. We get an amazing death scene to truly highlight the hopelessness of this battle. As the commander of the elves is killed, someone who is a true friend to the Fellowship, providing shelter and support, and they had the good sense to shoot this scene in slow motion, so we get an opportunity to appreciate this moment, while not taking us out of the battle long enough to ruin the tension. The Orcai manage to break through the door with the battering ram, as the rest of the forces make their retreat, and King Theoden gets a chance to show his quality. He stands his ground, and returns the favor with a spear to the neck, then sends Aragorn and Gimli out to stall them so they can repair the door. And we get another example of the speed and efficiency of the character scenes, where we get a reminder of Gimli's fighting spirit, a fun callback to the first film, and a great bonding moment for our two characters. They take the horde head on, using the bridge to funnel them in and buy time to repair the door. But the final phase of their plan is put into action as they launch grappling hooks to raise their siege ladders to get to the second stage. And with that, they are overrun and forced to retreat, as you see Legolas shooting arrows to the very last second.
The fortress is taken. It is over.
Theoden's will has almost been broken, and we get a shot of panic from the women and children hidden below. But Aragorn's strength as a leader shines through as he refuses to give up, and he convinces them to ride out and take a final stand, raising their spirits.
Fell deeds awake. Now for wrath, now for ruin, and the Red Lord.
And he stays true to his word to die as one of them, as they ride out to buy time for the women and children to escape. And Gandalf stays true to his as well, retrieving Éomer and the rest of the Rohirrim that were banished from that greasy-ass Grima. And we get the incredible shot of the cavalry charging in to slaughter the Orcai to win the battle, and push what's left of them into the forest to be finished off by the Ents. one of the most legendary battle scenes of all time, and one of my all-time favorites. But why is it well written? I can still remember the atmosphere of the theater when I first saw this film. The dead silence in the room, the absolute respect the audience had for this moment, the sound of the rain bouncing off their armor, the slow, imposing march of the Orkai in the distance. It's basically a horror scene, an element that Peter Jackson manages to blend beautifully into the whole trilogy, with Helms Deep being one of the greatest examples. But not only was effort put into creating the atmosphere, from the incredible lighting and the use of practical effects, but an equal amount of effort was done balancing the tone, having playful banter between Legolas and Gimli to further develop their relationship.
Legolas! I'm on 17!
Contrasted with Aragorn's serious demeanor and the weight he feels on his shoulders, essentially fighting for the fate of his race. Getting to see how different people are affected by battle, as Theoden and Legolas both have moments of weakness, only to be rallied by Aragorn. They somehow manage to set up future payoffs, develop characters, character relationships, mourn fallen comrades, and add comic relief while managing to maintain a serious tone throughout the entire scene.
You could have picked a better spot.
This takes time, talent, and effort that is very rarely seen these days. Instead of just using shaky camera to cover up their mistakes, they actually committed to choreographed scenes you can follow, and clear overhead shots of the fortress to keep track of the battle. Just some of the many reasons that this fight scene is still a banger after all these years, where most modern battles are forgotten within a week. Now, let's compare that to the battle scene in the Rings of Power. We see Adar has raised an army of orcs and is ready for war. He gives a big speech about orc oppression, and I find it hilarious that not only is he a better leader, but he seems to care more about the orcs than Galadriel cares about the elves.
Some of us will fall. For the first time, we do so, not as unnamed slaves in faraway lands, but as brothers and sisters in our home.
And unlike Saruman, who we saw build his army of 10,000 Orcai, specifically to wipe out Rohan, we have no idea who this guy is or how he did this, or how many there are. All we know is that they're after an artifact, and after confirming that it's in the tower, they're on their way. They roll up to the town and find it completely abandoned, only to be ambushed by Elf Guy, who reveals his position for no reason at all, and decides to shoot a random orc instead of Adar, and then kick his master plan into action. He shoots a flaming arrow that somehow instantly burns this thick-ass rope, setting the tower crashing down. So somehow this rope was strong enough to hold up this entire tower, but also weak enough to get insta-killed by that little flame? Show, stop cheating, you can't have both. He kicks a rock to start a chain reaction that closes the door. The door that he doesn't use in this entire scene. The door he could have just closed and locked before they even arrived. This is literally here just to look cool. It doesn't. He runs away as the tower falls down, and I sit here finding myself asking, what the fuck is wrong with both of you? Adar gave a speech like 5 seconds ago about how much he cared about the orcs, and now he's totally cool with seeing his brothers and sisters crushed. And not only did Elf Guy refuse to shoot Adar, he blew up their best line of defense. What the hell is this plan? Helms Deep took a greasy snitch, a big ass bomb, and a kamikaze berserker to bring down the wall. But in the Rings of Power, they literally do it to themselves. They blow themselves up and choose to fight in a little town instead of what was pretty much a castle. Stop celebrating, you're all idiots. Then the show reminds us how much Elf Guy sucks by having him struggle to see them from a distance. And instead of organized volleys from the archers, their first line of defense is the mighty Bronwyn. She tries to light a cart on fire and is spotted by an orc. Elf Guy sees him approaching and does absolutely nothing to help or warn them. He just stands there. But it's fine, Bronwyn charges in to take him out and decides to stab him in the foot instead of anywhere fatal. And this stupid choice gets her friend killed. And none of the other orcs hear any of this or see them fighting. They're literally meters away and still, nothing. She doesn't check on her friend. She doesn't mourn her. It's like it never even happened. She pushes her cart and takes a minute to enjoy her work. And then she runs away and leaves the corpse of her friend there to rot.
What the hell are you? No!
Orcs are now as stupid as stormtroopers, as we watch them do nothing to avoid getting trapped. And now that they are blocked in, the town finally starts to fight back. And it looks like their plan is working. Until one Chad orc says, "Fuck your barricade." And somehow they specifically know to target the tavern, even though they came for the tower. But of course, there's no time to think about any of that as they get flanked by the villagers and the battle begins. Elf guy gets dragged into a wrestling match in the middle of the fight. But don't worry, he's saved by the mighty Bronwyn. But there's a twist. They find out that they've been fighting their own. Even though these were clearly orcs, stop cheating, show. And they get swarmed by arrows. And we see that Bronwyn is finally brought down by 2 arrows. Let's count them together, shall we? 1 and 2. Okay, we all saw that, right? Yet somehow when they retreat to the tavern, there's only 1 arrow in her. Explain yourself, show. This is just plain cheating. How can I take you seriously when you retcon her reaction to an arrow? First, we had Ray with the disappearing knife. And now, the mighty Bronwyn with the phantom arrow. This is some bullshit. Everyone in the room watches as Theo brands his own mother. No idea why they aren't attending to the other injured people, or why they picked a child to do this kind of job. And the more important question, where the hell are all the orcs? Where'd they go? We just saw a bunch of them directly outside of the tavern, but they put them on pause just so we can get our emotional scene. Even though we know they're not gonna kill Bronwyn, and as soon as she wakes up, the orcs are suddenly back, and Adar gets his cue to make a cool entrance. And freed from the oppression of the pause button, the orcs swarm the tavern with Adar, killing random villagers after Elf Guy refuses to give up the artifact. This guy is basically my protagonist at this point. I hate everyone. And after threatening his mother, Theo gives him the hilt. And as soon as he gets it, we hear the rumbling of the cavalry. How the fuck is this happening? How? How? They made it very clear how far away they were.
It's a full day's sail into the mountains. And from there, another day's ride east into the Vale.
This is what I'm referring to when I say that this show makes no sense. Unlike Gandalf, who gave specific instructions to Aragorn and came through on his promise, knowing exactly where to meet them.
Look to my coming. At first light on the 5th day. At dawn, look to the east.
Galadriel bullied the Númenóreans, dragged them across an ocean, and managed to bend time and space in order to arrive right when they needed it. Fuck this show. Elf Guy and the villagers fight their way out. Even though they are unarmed, this fight is suddenly winnable. And then Galadriel and the rest of the Númenóreans remind us that this show's choreography is a special kind of shit.
Who is that?
Commander of the Northern Armies. Galadriel.
And we find out Adar has been on pause this entire scene. He hasn't left. He hasn't even gotten on his goddamn horse. Which gives her time to have a chase scene with him and do her best Arwen impression. And if you thought the show was finished with the cheating, you were wrong, as Halbrand uses a Doctor Strange portal to cut off Adar and get in front of them. Or at least he must have, because we clearly saw him leave way after they did. And with the strength of 10 crackheads, he manages to trip his horse with one hand on the spear. How is any of this possible? What is really... Wait, where the fuck is she going? What? She's just out. She's just out. What the fuck? They have her ride off in a random direction and put her on pause just so Adar and Halbrand can have time to talk.
One cannot satisfy thirst by drinking seawater.
Oh, shut up!
She literally vanishes for a full minute and then pops up out of nowhere to talk about seawater. Fuck this. Fuck this. I'm out. What are you really doing with your money, Amazon? What the fuck am I watching? And this is where I throw in the towel. The show is broken me. Just give me something for the pain. Let me die. Alright. So why is this written like ass? Well, when you compare the two battles, one of the first things that comes to mind is the logical progression throughout the fights. Helms Deep manages to capture the sense of desperation and show them using every resource they have to the best of their abilities. From having children throwing rocks, to the strategic use of the fortress, even stall tactics to provide time for repairs. The siege could be broken down into stages that were clear for the audience to follow and stay invested. But with the Rings of Power, from the first sequence, nothing makes any sense, as we watch them destroy their own tower, risk their best warrior, and choose the worst place imaginable to have a battle.
Our position gives us an advantage. You stupid.
Helms Deep gave Aragorn a platform for one of the greatest displays of leadership and bravery ever put to film. But with Elf Guy, he spends most of this episode getting humiliated, and all the major payoffs go to stupid Bronwyn. And rather than having a meaningful mourning scene like Aragorn did, we have the privilege of watching her get her friend killed and leaving her body for the wolves. And unlike Theoden, who's mature enough to be honest about the situation,
it was not Theoden of Rohan who led our people to victory.
As I understand it, they are alive because of you.
A burden I never sought to take up.
Few of the finest leaders do.
we get to watch her take all the credit, while Elf Guy stands there in the back like a bum. It's just embarrassing. At no point do I have a clear idea for the number of orcs, or what exactly their tactics are, which completely kills the suspense when I can't get an idea of what kind of threat they present. And any believable moment of progression is quickly spoiled by either blatant cheating, teleporting, or putting people on pause just so that they can have a scene that they want. I just don't understand how the attention to detail could be this bad with so much on the line. We had to endure 5 episodes of bullshit just to build up to one of the shittiest battles of all time. And at this point, I just have to ask, was it worth it? Was it worth it wasting our lives with the Harfoot scenes? Was it worth it punishing us with Guy Ladriel's miserable face? Was it worth it teasing potentially interesting characters just to do nothing to develop them? Was it worth it to disrespect an entire fan base and put such a stain on a legacy that you had no part in creating? You tried to buy your place in history. You tried to inherit a fan base, but you failed to understand the very thing you tied your brand to. And now, this billion-dollar failure will haunt you forever. So thank you for giving us all one more reason to rewatch and appreciate Peter Jackson's masterpiece, The Lord of the Rings, a trilogy of films that continues to withstand the test of time and stay deeply rooted in the hearts of millions all over the world. Compared to your treacherous shitbox series that's already been forgotten. Fuck you.
You shall not pass!
I'm good.
Right.
If in doubt, Enoch, always follow your nose.
When in doubt, Eleanor Brandyfoot. Always follow your nose.
Second!